Yo, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was in 5 Nights at Freddy's and got harem, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Spiral Turtle 6. Link is in the description, and also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. How do you describe death? Most would say it's a painless process where your spirit leaves your mortal body to move on to the life hereafter. Others say that it's a new journey you will embark on, and many just can't find the right words to describe it. There is one thing that people don't always take into account, and that is that those that die can be so haunted by not being able to move on they become ghosts. All of these thoughts flowed through the head of a person who sat atop some rubble. He had brown hair with a brown formal vest, pants, light brown shirt, and white gloves, a big black bow tie. He had brown formal shoes, his eyes were light blue, and a black top hat sat atop his head. The person seemed as though he was deep in thought, as he watched the people walk past the rubble he sat on. His eyebrows knitted together in concentration. Why was he so dedicated to his thoughts? Well, not even an hour ago he was dead. He didn't know how he was dead because he wasn't alive in the first place. Not only that, but the body he had at the moment wasn't one he was used to. Why is this? Because when he was alive he had the body of an animatronic, a beloved children's entertainer. Now he wore normal clothes, and had skin. Not only that, but he was also invisible to the people around him. How long has it been? What was the name of this village he currently found himself in? And where were his friends? These, and many more thoughts ran through his head. But these thoughts stopped when he saw a shadow sneaking behind the rubble. This male was curious as to who this person could be. The structure of the body left him to believe that the person was either a child or a very small adult. Either way, he felt it was his duty to check. A 7-year-old blonde boy was searching through the rubble of one of the buildings in the district he resided in. He was looking for something that would be of value so he could trade it in for money, or some goods that he required. Now you are asking yourself why a 7-year-old is searching through rubble? Well, the simple fact is, this child is an orphan, and poor, two of the worst things to be, especially if you were this 7-year-old. It was bad because this boy wasn't very liked in his village, and none of the villagers would give him a reason why they hate besides a sneer, and a rude remark grumbled under their breath. So we find the boy scouring the rubble for valuables or something that will cover him up at night while he laid on the cold hard alley floor. So far all he found was rubble, and oh look, more rubble. The boy sighed in disappointment, and got up from kneeling in the dirt. He dusted off his torn trousers, and turned around, coming face to face with the person from before. They stared at each other for a few seconds, then the older male tried to break the silence. "Hi," he said. "Ghost," he yelled, turning around, and attempted to run away. But his foot got caught under some rubble, making him fall onto the ground with LMF. "Hey, you alright?" asked the male, floating over to the blonde. "Yes, floating." "Get away!" the boy yelled, getting on his rump, and tried to scoot away. His back hit a wall, making the blonde panic more. Closing his eyes, he waited for whatever the ghost had in store for him. After a few moments, the blonde looked up to see the ghost from before was sitting cross-legged in front of him with a soft smile on his face. The boy relaxed slightly, but also kept on guard in case it was all a trick. "Better?" The blonde nodded stiffly. "Good. So since you're the only person that can see me, I think we should get to know one another." The boy didn't say anything, making the brown-haired male to sign, and hang his head. "I guess I'll go first." He looked up well, tapping his chin with his index finger. "Let's see. First of all, my name is Freddy Fazbear. I'm, as you guessed, a ghost." The boy slightly froze up at that. "But I don't know how I became a ghost though. I'm a former children's entertainer of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza." Freddy smiled at the boy, whose posture didn't change. Neither said anything, watching each other, one with supposition, and the other with anticipation. And Naruto said to the boy softly, not that Freddy couldn't hear him since the night was quiet, "Naruto Uzumaki. I'm an orphan who never knew my parents. I'm gonna be Hokage one day so everybody can respect me," the boy said passionately. Freddy looked surprised at the boy's passion, then a thought occurred to him. "Hokage?" he asked. "And this is my favorite place in the whole village," said Naruto, as he and Freddy stood on the head of a face carved into a huge monument, which had 3 other faces carved into the same monument, all on its right side. After telling the ghost about the Hokage, and how he was respected by everybody in the village, and how he wanted to be seen as a person, this got the boy to talk about how the other villagers treated him. "The view is great," said Freddy, gazing at the lights of the village. "Yeah, I come up here to get away from all the hateful looks I get from the villagers." Freddy looked over to see the boy gaze sadly at the village. "I don't blame them, you know," said Naruto, smiling sadly at the village. Freddy remained silent. The two kept watching the lights of the village that started going out, as some people went to bed. "Do you have friends?" asked Naruto, making Freddy turn his attention to the blonde boy once again. "Yeah, I guess I do," said Freddy, smiling fondly, thinking about his fellow entertainers. That must be nice, having friends. The brown-haired man stopped smiling, and gazed sadly at the 7-year-old. Do you want to be friends? Naruto's eyes widened in shock, and turned to look at the ghost floating next to him, who was smiling softly at him. Really? He asked. Now a normal person would be weary if a ghost wants to be your friend, but to a boy who is a social outcast this was the closest he'd ever come to getting a friend. Sure, I'm a ghost with no direction in life, stated Freddy with a shrug. Naruto's eyes watered, as he jumped at Freddy, catching him in a hug. The former entertainer was really surprised at the contact, not because he wasn't used to it, but, as far as he knew, touching a ghost is far from possible. Thank you? The boy cried happily. Freddy got over his shock, and patted the blonde on the back. Isn't this touching? Voice said. There was a burst of smoke, and confetti behind the two, making them turn around to see who it was. A man stepped out of the cloud. He was dressed in a black suit with black and white striped sleeves, a black pair of pants. He had a white shirt under the formal jacket, and white gloves. His hair was black, and silver at the tips, and his eyes were silver with black on the edges. Under his eyes were 2 black stripes. Freddy's eyes widened in shock, recognizing this person instantly. He moved Naruto so he was protecting him with his body. What are you doing here? Freddy demanded with a growl. The man lifted his hands up in a calming motion. Cool it, Fredbear, said the man, making Freddy growl louder. I'm just here to talk to the kid. Like hell I'll let you even near Naruto, said Freddy firmly. Naruto was amazed that someone was standing up for him, even though it was a ghost. Hey Freddy, who's this? Asked Naruto, pointing at the man. A friend of yours? Far from it, Naruto, said Freddy, narrowing his eyes. His name is the puppet, or the marionette. He's trouble. Oh come on, that's just rude, Freddy. I thought we were friends, said the black-haired man with crocodile tears rolling down his cheeks. When he saw that the two didn't react to his display, his sweat dropped. Geez, tough crowd. Listen, Freddy, I'm just here to give the two of you some tips on the current situation we all have currently found ourselves in, said Puppet, getting serious. I don't know how we have found ourselves in the realm of the living once again, but they say don't look a gift horse in the mouth for a reason. We should use this opportunity to figure out why we're here. What do you say, Freddy? Wanna help me figure out why this is happening, and find your friends? Asked Puppet. Freddy kept his eyes trained on the formally dressed man, neither budged an inch. You could feel the tension in the air. No thanks, said Freddy, making Naruto freeze in shock. But don't you want to see your friends? Asked Naruto, as Freddy looked at him over his shoulder with a smile. One thing you gotta know about friends, Naruto, said Freddy. Friends believe in the strength that they have, whether it be together or apart, said Freddy, smiling in reassurance. Honestly, I'm not that surprised at your response, said Puppet, smirking while closing his eyes. I think I'll help. Freddy's eyes widened, and turned to face Puppet again, holding his fists up. I'll die before I let you help, Naruto, said Freddy, taking a step forward. There was a gust of wind, then Puppet had his right hand placed on Naruto's head. Freddy, and Naruto's eyes widened in shock at the pure speed of the black/silver-haired male. Remember who made you what you were, Fazbear, said Puppet, a menacing aura surrounding him, making the two freeze at the sheer force of it all. Now you are gonna shut up and listen to me, said Puppet, making the brown-haired male nod fearfully. I'm not sure how we here, in the land of the living once again. As I have stated earlier, Puppet took his hand off of Naruto's head, and held it behind the boy's back straight with his fingers pointing at the boy's back. But I learned of a trick we can perform while we're here. Puppet pulled his hand back. Freddy's eyes widened at the action. Naruto, he tried to move, but fear kept him rooted to the spot, as Puppet's hand pierced Naruto's back. But instead of blood gushing from a wound, Puppet just vanished in a puff of smoke that enveloped Naruto. The aura of fear had just vanished the minute Puppet did. When the smoke vanished, Freddy got up to check on his new friend, but stopped dead in his tracks at what he saw. There in front of him, where there once stood a boy in rags, now stood a boy with a black long-sleeved jersey that had a high collar covering his whole neck, with silver buttons at the top, with long sleeves that had black and white strips on the lower portion of the sleeve. He wore black pants that were held tight to his leg by 2 leather straps on each thigh. His shoes were now black and white striped pirate boots, and his hands had black gloves on them. Freddy's eyes widened in shock at the boy before him, who looked at his clothes in what appeared to be shock. His eyeballs were completely black voids with purple lines running under his eyes going through his whisker like birthmarks. 2 red dots were located under his eyes close to his ears. What happened? Asked an amazed and slightly frightened Naruto, touching his head, and feeling the mask there, which he took off to look at it, had a happy look on its face. It would have been cheerful if it wasn't for the fact that its eyes were slighted, and purple lines ran underneath it. The smile was terrifying. 2 big red dots were on the sides of the mask where the cheeks would be. This dear boy is what Fazbear and I can do, said Naruto in a distorted voice which was a cross between Puppet and his voice. How are you doing that? Asked Freddy. floating closer to inspect the blonde boy. Puppet/Naruto looked over their body in mild interest while replying to Freddy's question. What I hypothesis is that the boy is currently possessed by me, he said while looking up at Freddy with half-lidded eyes. You know what that's like, don't you? He said, tilting his head to the side. Freddy's eyes narrowed in anger with a deep frown on his face. What's he talking about, Freddy? Asked Naruto with a confused look on his face. You don't need to worry about that right now, Naruto said to Freddy with a small smile on his face. I'm more concerned if you're alright? Naruto gave him a big grin. I feel fine, he paused, looking at his hand. In fact, I feel stronger than I ever felt before. The kid gains abilities when we share a body, said Puppet/Naruto, stretching his arm out towards a tree that was a certain distance away. Freddy's eyes widened in shock along with Naruto, who retracted his arm back and looked at it, as if getting a new toy. Puppet/Naruto reached up and seemed to be grasping at the air in front of his face, then started pulling a silhouette out of his face. When the shadow figure was fully extracted, Naruto's clothes were reverted back to what it previously looked like. Puppet stood straight while dusting his clothes off of non-existent dirty. When he was sure his clothes were clean enough, he regarded Freddy with a smirk. That is one of the many things we can do in this world, Fazbear said. What I'm more curious about is how Naruto was able to stretch his arm like that, and why his clothes changed when you possessed him, said Freddy, crossing his arms while studying Puppet. That's a result of Naruto being possessed by someone like us, said Puppet, patting Naruto on the head. As it stands, Naruto is the only one who can see us, and we're only able to interact with him. Every other human can't even sense us. Puppet grabbed Naruto by the front of his top. When he's possessed by one of us, the boy's clothes change to a version of it. Maybe these items of clothes gift him with a certain ability, or has some status effect. Puppet gave Naruto's clothes a tug, then Naruto's looked like it did when Puppet possessed him, with the black eyes not being present this time around. Naruto looked down at his clothes with wide eyes, and grabbed his top, and gave it a yank, making it revert back to what it was before. The boy kept this up for a while. Freddy and Puppet smiled at the childishness of the boy. This boy is special, said the Puppet softly so the boy couldn't hear. You feel it too, said Freddy, looking at the Puppet from the corner of his eye. Yes, I do, said Puppet, looking at the night sky. He's the only one to survive the possession. That statement made Freddy stumble back in shock, landing on his rear in shock. Die! The brown-haired male yelled in shock, gaining Naruto's attention, who left the Puppet-themed clothes on. What do you mean he's the only one to survive? Puppet shrugged nonchalantly. I mean what I said. Naruto was the only one who survived be possessed by me, said Puppet, making Naruto pale, which shows that there is hidden potential in him. Naruto didn't know whether to be happy or terrified at the moment. Happy because someone believes he is special. Terrified because it took a near-death experience for them to realize it. That still doesn't change the fact that you almost killed him, yelled an angry Freddy. Hey, he's alive, isn't he, said Puppet with a dismissive hand gesture towards the brown-haired male, who sighed in defeat. There's no arguing with you, and your stubborn attitude, said a dejected Freddy, as Puppet nodded his head. What do you plan to do now? Puppet hummed and thought. I want to see what this world has to offer, he said, as he started to float up into the night sky. Don't worry, I'll drop by every now and again, he said, grinning down at Naruto. Hey, tell you what, little guy, I'll bring you a present every time I drop by. Naruto looked excited at that. I mean, it's not like I haven't done it in the past, mumbled Puppet with a faraway look in his eyes. He shook his head, then gave a two-finger salute, and took off, flying into the distance. Naruto walked down the street of the village with his hands behind his head, looking towards the morning sky. He was wearing the new clothes he was given last night. Every villager that saw him looked at him with suspicion, probably suspicious of where he got the new set of clothes. Some thought he stole it. Freddy floated behind Naruto, watching how the villagers reacted to Naruto's presence, and it was obvious that the other villagers didn't really like the blonde boy. Freddy furrowed his brows in confusion. What would warrant the hatred of everybody for a 7-year-old's very existence? Freddy kept it to himself though, since Naruto seemed oblivious to the hatred being directed at him. The two were headed towards a big building that was located in the middle of the village. Naruto said that the building was called the Academy, where children studied to become a ninja. They entered the gates of the academy, which was occupied by many children and parents who were dropping them off for school. The minute the blonde set foot inside, there was a resounding silence that fell over the whole playground. Not a peep was made. The boy just kept walking with a huge grin on his face, looking up at the building. Normally he hated coming to school, mainly because his teacher ignored him all the time, but today the class was getting a new teacher. The boy walked into the building, heading for his classroom that sounded very rowdy from the distance he was at. The blonde boy stood in front of the door, listening to the ruckus going on behind the door. Children were screaming behind the door, along with laughter, even the barking of a dog. Naruto grabbed the handle while mentally preparing himself for the students in his class. Freddy was also preparing himself for the reaction from the class. When Naruto slid the door open, the children turned to see who it was, and many were shocked at what they saw. Naruto gave them all a big grin, walking down in, and closing the door. He walked towards his usual seat, which happened to be next to a black-haired boy who was giving him a curious look. When the blonde sat down, the black-haired boy turned his body towards the blonde, and gave him a narrowed-eye look. "Naruto?" he asked, as the blonde gave him a big grin, and 2 thumbs up. "You know it," he said cheerfully, breaking the class out of their shocked reactions. "Where did you get those clothes?" asked the blonde girl, getting up from her seat to inspect the clothes of the blonde boy, who blinked in response to the action. "They were a gift from a friend of mine," he answered well, and the girl grabbed his arm, and inspected the fabric. "And where is he?" asked the black-haired boy, not believing the blonde at all. "He left again," said Naruto, gently pulling his arm away from the blonde next to him. The girl blinked in surprise that the object she was studying was pulled away from her grasp. "Some friends say he is a black-haired boy," with a scoff. Naruto's eyes widened at that, then narrowed in anger. "Say that again, team," he said, grabbing the boy by the collar. Leaving Sasuke-kun alone, yelled at a random girl, making all the other girls yell in agreement, but Naruto chose to ignore them. Naruto the blonde looked up, and Freddy, making everybody else look up, see what he was looking at, but saw nothing. "You might want to look closer at the boy you're holding." "Huh? What do you mean?" was Naruto's response, making the others look at him, as if he lost his mind. "Well, that's not really a boy," Freddy said, further confusing the blonde boy. "What do you mean he's not a boy?" he asked, feeling Sasuke stiffen in his grip. "Who are you talking to?" asked one of the students, but was ignored by Naruto. Well, Freddy closed his eyes while trying to figure out a way to show Naruto what he sees. After a moment he opened his eyes, and nodded his head, then flew behind Naruto, who turned his head to look over his shoulder to look at the male. To others it looked like he was looking at the blonde girl from before, who blushed at the intense look he was giving her. "What?" the girl asked. Naruto ignored her, looking at Freddy, who pointed his hand towards Naruto's back like a puppet did before, took a deep breath, then plunged his hand into Naruto's back. There was a puff of smoke that made the others cough when it vanished. The class were shocked, speechless again. There Naruto, his clothes were changed again. On his head, where the mask was, there now sat a black top hat that was slightly smaller than a normal top hat. He had on a formal button-up white top with the first 2 buttons undone. A brown formal jacket around the collar of his white top was a black bow tie that hung lazily. He wore formal dark brown pants with black and white formal shoes. On his hands were black fingerless gloves. His hair was slicked back, and his eyes shined a brighter blue than before. Naruto looked down at his clothes. "Cool," he said with a grin, then focused his attention back on the boy in his grasp, but paused. Instead of seeing a boy with a duck but hairstyle, he laid eyes on a black-haired girl whose hair was long and hung down to her, but if she stood up, her clothing was the same black top that she wore when she was viewed as a boy, but it was smaller and less baggy. Instead of shorts, she wore a white skirt. "Wait a minute," said Naruto with his face scrunched in thought. The black-haired girl started sweating well. Her eyes widened in fear. "You are a girl!" Naruto yelled, his mouth hanging open in shock. The class was dead silent at that, and no one said a word, too shocked at what the blonde boy said. "Are you senile?" said a male student, causing the whole class to laugh at the blonde. "But she is!" he yelled, looking at the class, shocked that they couldn't see what he could. They just laughed harder at that, pointing at him. "Baka, are you so intimidated by Sasuke-kun that you sunk so low to call him a girl?" yelled the blonde girl with a howl of laughter, making the class laugh harder and louder. Naruto's anger started rising at the students as they laughed in his face. He was gonna lash out at them, whether it be choice words or fists and kicks, he didn't care, but he was stopped by a voice. "Shut up, Ino," said Sasuke, his hair shadowing his eyes. The class stopped at that, looking towards the boy, who looked up and glared at them. But Sasuke-kun. Ino tried to say something, but the boy stood up sharply. "You all have no right to laugh at him," Sasuke yelled. "He's the only one who saw the real me." After saying that, he put his hands in the ram's seal and yelled out, "Reals." There was a puff of smoke around Sasuke that once again made the students cough. When it disappeared, so did the male form they were used to seeing. Instead there stood the same girl Naruto saw when Freddy possessed him. "Listen up," the girl said, placing her hands on her hips. "My real name is Satsuki Uchiha. Sasuke Uchiha was never alive, he was only a cover-up. I was always a girl, using her to conceal my true identity, and Naruto was the only one to ever figure it out," the girl said hotly to the pale class. Naruto looked at the girl in surprise. Not only was she a female instead of the male who he was used to seeing, but she was standing up for him. The girl humped, then flipped her long hair over her shoulder, and sat back down with her arms crossed, and a sour look on her face. The class was stunned into silence, which lasted for at least a minute. Then they heard a girlish scream, which came from a dog-looking boy, who fainted, which started a chain reaction, making all the other students faint. The teacher of the new class was standing just outside the door. He was excited this was his first class ever, and he hoped that he would be able to teach them to the best of his abilities. He smoothed his hair back, and took a deep breath. He reached for the handle, and slid the door open. "Good morning class, my name is Irika Yumino," and he stopped mid-sentence seeing more than half the class was passed out save for two, a black-haired girl with a sour look on her face, and a blonde in formal clothes. "What happened?" asked Irika with a confused look on his face, gaining the attention of the two who were still in the land of the living. "TMI-sensei, TMI," said Naruto, making Irika more confused. After the revealing of Satsuki's real gender, everybody woke up, but was still in a shell-shocked condition. Irika took this time to ask each student to introduce themselves. He went from one side of the class to the other, having each student say their name and surname. When he reached Naruto's side, he pointed at the girl next to him, saying, "You're next." The girl stood up. "My name is Satsuki Uchiha," and she said she sat back down. Irika looked at the list he was given, and couldn't find the girl's name. The name Uchiha was there, but the name Sasuke was next to it. "I'm sorry, but could you repeat your name please?" asked Irika, making Satsuki sigh in annoyance. "I said it's Satsuki," she said. "My name used to be Sasuke." "Sasuke, but that's a boy's name?" The girl interrupted. Her new sensei nodded. "It's because I used to be a boy." "How is that possible?" asked Irika. So the girl took some time to explain to the new teacher of their class the same thing she said to the rest of the class. To say Irika was shocked would be an understatement. He was floored. The last Uchiha was a female, which was actually a bad thing. Hokage-sama has to know about this, he thought to himself, as he nodded when the girl ended her explanation. "That's something," said Irika with a sweat drop. "Next." "Oh, my name is Naruto Uzumaki," said Naruto, sitting back down after introducing himself. He watched Irika waiting for him to give him a disgusted or hateful look, but got a surprise when the man just smiled and nodded, then moved on to the next person. "Wow, Irika-sensei doesn't hate me," he thought in confusion, then a big grin took his face. "I like him already." "It's him," thought Irika with mild surprise. Honestly, he didn't hate the blonde, he was just weary about how much control the boy had of that which was sealed inside of him. "Alright, now that introductions are over with, you may all go out for lunch." The children cheered and ran out of the class. Now to go speak with Hokage-sama, he thought, walking out of class. Naruto found himself sitting on top of the Academy/Hokage tower looking over the village. He was sitting by the railing with one of the rails between his legs that dangled over the edge. He was enjoying the view, and the breeze that blew through his, once again spiky hair. Freddy had exited Naruto's body after the introductions, but Naruto decided to keep the new clothes on for the introductions to get used to them. When he went to lunch, he decided to wear his puppet clothes. The boy smiled, leaning his head against the rail. Freddy floated above Naruto, lying on his back with his top hat over his eyes. The brown-haired ghost felt a little drained after possessing the blonde boy, so he decided to take a nap to regain some energy. Naruto's head perked up in surprise at someone calling his nickname. He turned his head to see Satsuki standing there with her arms crossed. "We need to talk." The girl's appearance made Freddy lift his hat to see what was going on, but went back to sleep when he saw Naruto wasn't in any danger. "Sure, Team Naruto," said, using the girl's nickname he gave her when she was a boy. The girl scowled, but didn't retort to the nickname. Instead, she decided to place her hands on her hips. "Well? Get up, even though I enjoy you looking up to me," she said, smirking. Naruto growled at her, and stood up, finding that he was actually slightly taller than the girl. "What do you want?" he asked with a frown on his face. Satsuki huffed, also noticing the height difference. "I want to know how you were able to see through my, which is Lojounin ranked." Naruto shrugged his shoulders with an aloof look on his face. "I just can, okay?" he said nonchalantly, further pissing the girl off. "No, it's not okay," she said hotly, stomping her foot on the ground. "How can an idiot like you see through such a high level?" As if he had the Byakugan. Red started rising to her cheeks at the anger she had. Naruto blinked at the look she was giving him. "Wow, she looks cute," he thought, blushing slightly. "Why are you blushing, Baka?" the girl questioned angrily. "Well, you look cute when you're angry," Naruto said, making Satsuki freeze. Her face slowly took on a horrified look with a huge blush on her cheeks, which almost took over her whole face. "Baka!" she yelled, punching him in the stomach, making the blonde lean forward with an omph while gripping his stomach in pain. "Don't do such things!" the girl yelled, her whole face a red glowing beacon now, while Naruto fell to the ground still gripping his stomach. Freddy had lifted his hat once again to watch the interaction between the two, and couldn't help but chuckle at the display they put on. If one didn't know any better, they'd say the two were in love with one another, he thought, placing his hat back over his eyes to rest again. When their lunch ended, all the students returned to the class to continue their day. Most of them noticed the tension between Naruto and Satsuki, as the two refused to look at one another, one with an angry expression, and the other with an embarrassed look, both sporting blushes on their faces. When Irika entered the room, he looked towards the two, and saw the angry, piercing-looking black-haired girl was giving the boy next to her who tried to sink into his seat. The man coughed into his hand, getting the attention of the two. Satsuki and Naruto, the two looked towards their sensei, giving him their undivided attention. The Hokage has requested both your presences. The two nodded, and got up to leave the classroom with Naruto leading the way. The two walked out of the class, and headed towards the stairs that would take them towards the Hokage's office. As they walked, Naruto could feel the angry look the girl behind him was directing towards his back. The blonde boy sighed in annoyance. He was getting sick of these looks the girl was directing towards him. The boy spun on his heel so he could look at the girl who bumped into him. Listen, I'm sick of you constantly sending evil looks towards my back, he said, glaring at the girl, who blinked in surprise, then tilted her head up slightly to glare at the blonde boy. Deal with it, she said, because you're gonna be getting worse from me. From this day forth we are rivals, the girl said with finality, crossing her arms. Naruto blinked in shock at the girl's declaration. The blonde never thought about having a rival before. No thanks, he said, turning around and walking up the stairs. Satsuki's face faltered at that. She got up quickly, then ran towards the blonde, grabbing the arm of his shirt, and spun him around to face her even if he had to look down at her. What do you mean no thanks? She practically hissed at the boy who knocked her hand off. I mean what I said. I don't want a rival, he said dismissively. Are you really stupid or something? Yelled Satsuki, angered at the audacity of the blonde boy. Did he think she was too weak? Was it because she was a girl? This is why she used to look like a boy, because then people would take her seriously. Deep down she thought that Naruto would be different, that he would actually believe that she could get strong. I thought he was different. Guess he's just like every other dash. If you let me finish talking you'd realize that I don't want a rivalry now. The girl looked up in shock. Maybe later when we're actually ninja then we can be rivals if we're on the same team with his piece, said Naruto. Turned around to continue walking, but stopped, and looked over his shoulder at the girl who was shell-shocked at the moment. If you think disguising yourself as a boy would get you the respect you want then you're terribly mistaken. Satsuki-chan, he said with a grin at her. The honorific the boy added to her name made her blush scarlet again. Smooth, said Freddy was still floating on his back, and his hat still over his eyes. He made a smooth motion with his one hand while the other was behind his head. Shut up, whispered Naruto with a blush. Oh man! I can't believe I just called her that, he thought in despair. A chibi version of himself was crying anime tears in his head. She's gonna kill me. The chibi started writing a will. Despite his inner thoughts, Satsuki wasn't even thinking of hurting him in the slightest. He called me Satsuki-chan, she thought with a blush, but tried to school her emotions before he caught her blushing again, and got the wrong idea. GG. Why must I go with Naruto, whining in a childish tone. Satsuki and the third Hokage walked towards the meeting room that was called by the old Hokage, who was wearing his Hokage attire at the moment, with the two trailing behind him. Because Naruto-kun, you are the reason Satsuki's true gender is now revealed, the Hokage said in a calm voice. I told you this in my office. Yeah, but I still don't get why I'm being dragged along. So Satsuki's gender is made apparent, said, making his hand swing around in a circle once with a bored expression on his face. It's not such a big deal. I like her better, as a female anyway. Satsuki blushed at that, well, crossing her arms, and turning away with a huff. The third sighed tiredly. Honestly, the boy had the attention span of a fish. If it wasn't shiny or life-threatening then it didn't even bother him. Flashback. When the two made it to the Hokage's room they were both sporting blushes, and Naruto had a look of confusion on his face, mostly because he wondered why the girl behind him wasn't trying to beat his head in. Naruto nodded to the secretary, who gave a nod back. She didn't hate the blonde, she had a neutral feeling for the blonde treating him like everybody else. Naruto was about to kick the door open, but Satsuki knocked on it, glaring at the blonde boy. They heard it come from inside. They entered the office to see the old Hokage was looking out the window that was behind his desk. The two entered the room with Naruto closing the door behind them. They stood next to each other with their hands at their sides, waiting for the third to turn around. Satsuki could feel the tension in the room, as the third continued to look out the window. Hey Gigi, why'd you call us here? Asked Naruto, breaking the silence. Satsuki's eyes widened in shock at what the boy called the Hokage. Sigh, the Hokage let out a sigh. You do know how to ruin a moment, don't you, Naruto-kun, the old man said. The third spun his chair around to look at the two. He was smoking his pipe with the smell of tobacco present in the air. He studied the two, for the boy's different clothes, and the other because she was actually a female. But the other being female wasn't really a shock for him, since the girl asked him to help her keep her true gender a secret from everybody. So Satsuki-chan, is there a reason why you revealed your true gender to your class? He asked, exhaling some smoke. It wasn't my fault, the girl said, while pointing at Naruto. It's the dobe's fault. Hey, said Naruto with an angry look on his face. It was your fault, yelled Satsuki, turning to glare at him. Sparks were flying from their eyes. It's not my fault you sucked, the boy yelled, glaring down at the girl. The third coughed in his hand, making the two look at him. Actually, I would like to know how you were able to see that Satsuki-chan was under a. That's easy, Fr. Naruto froze with his eyes wide. Naruto-kun? The third raised his eyebrow with a worried look on his face. Even Satsuki looked a bit worried. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you what Naruto said, looking down. The third looked concerned. Ever since the blonde was a child, he would tell him everything. Nothing was kept secret between the two. Well, that may be a lie on the third's part, but he only kept certain secrets from the boy for his own safety. Alright, Naruto-kun, you may tell me when you're ready, said the third with a soft smile on his face. But may I know where you acquired those clothes from? Sorry, Gigi, but that's also a secret, the boy said, further saddening the third. Alright then, as I said before, you can tell me when you're ready. He turned to the black-haired girl who was looking at the blonde boy from the corner of her eye, looking slightly worried, but tried to hide it. Moving on to you, Satsuki-chan, he said, making the girl give him her full attention. With your true gender revealed, certain things are going to be brought to the foreground, and you might not like them, he said seriously, making the two look confused. Like what, Hokage-sama? Asked Satsuki, when she came to the third, asking him to teach her something to conceal her true gender until she became a genin. The old Kage instantly taught her one without even questioning her on why she wanted to do it. I can't tell you now, first I need to call a meeting of the village council, he said, getting up from his seat and making a hand sign behind his back, making a ANB with a dog mask and gravity-defying hair appear in the middle of the Hokage and the two kids, scaring said children. Dogs, call all the council members and tell them their presence is needed immediately. Hi, Hokage-sama, the man said before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Come along, you two, said the third, exiting the office with the two kids on his heels. End flashback. The three entered a meeting room that had a U-shaped table which was on a higher platform, which was just a foot of the ground, but it forced whoever stood in the middle to look up to those in the seats that currently were all occupied except the one seat which was located in the center of the U-shape, which was slightly higher than the others. The third left the two and walked towards the highest seat. As he walked, he passed the ANBU from before. Pausing in his walk, the third whispered something to the man, making the ANBU nod and walk to stand behind the two academy students. Alright, now this meeting can commence, said the Hokage the minute he sat down. Hokage-sama, why have you called this meeting? Asked a man who had his chin resting on his folded arms, looking as if he just woke up from a nap. That, Shikaku, involves the girl that has entered with me, he said, making all the other council members turn their attention towards the black-haired girl, who didn't shrink away from the gazes from the council members. Who is she? Asked a plump man sitting next to Shikaku. She is Satsuki Uchiha, said the third, making the other council members gasp, and then started to murmur amongst themselves. Sarutobi, how did another Uchiha survive, and we weren't informed? Asked an old woman sitting next to the Hokage, who frowned at the old Kage. There isn't another Uchiha, said Sarutobi while smirking in his mind. Let it never be, said the old man, never had a sense of humor. But she's standing right there, said an old man sitting on Sarutobi's other side. I see her. But there's no other Uchiha in the village, said the Kage. A sandy blonde-haired man sitting next to Shikaku turned to the man who was chuckling with his head on the table. Do you understand what is going on? He asked, making the man look at his friend with a smirk, not even lifting his head up from his folded arms. Come on, Inoichi, it's simple, was his reply, gaining the attention of everybody else. Figure it out. Inoichi looked up while stroking his chin and thought. Hokage-sama said she's an Uchiha, another Uchiha besides Sasuke. But there can't be two Uchiha because it is stated in the report, it states Itachi killed them all, bar his brother of course. So there being another Uchiha is close to impossible since Itachi and Sasuke are the only two known Uchihas in the elemental nations. So that means she was kept secret, which would make no sense because there is no reason for Hokage-sama to hide her existence, so that's ruled out. So the only possible answer is that the report was wrong, and this girl wasn't revealed until recently, meaning either she's a fake or Sasuke never existed. The man took a deep breath after that long explanation, and fell back into his seat. The whole room was silent. After that you could hear a pin drop, which was the sound that broke the others out of their trance to look at Naruto, who was looking down at a pin on the floor. What do you know, it's true what they say about it being so quiet you can hear a pin drop, he said, amazed. Sarutobi chuckled at that. Even Satsuki giggled, and the ANBU was trying not to laugh. The third cleared his throat, making everybody look back at him, as he began to explain. Good explanation, Inoichi. But there's a few things I want to rectify. First, she was actually kept a secret. Second, the report wasn't wrong until the last Uchiha being alive, and that is this girl. And third, she is the real deal. Mikoto had two children, a boy and girl, and the boy is a missing nin at the moment. Wait, so are you trying to tell us that Sasuke Uchiha wasn't real, and this girl was disguised as him the whole time? asked one of the civilian council members. That is exactly what I am telling you, said Sarutobi with a small smirk, stunning the meeting into silence again. Ciare, that was the sound that broke this silence. And it wasn't Naruto this time, it was another old man whose right eye was covered with bandages. Everybody looked at him when he said it. Sarutobi's smirk vanished to be replaced by a deep frown while looking at the man, more for what he said than his character. Come again, Danzo, said Sarutobi with a low growl in his tone. Normally other people back down when the old Kage got angry, but this man just turned to him with a bored look on his face. I said, Ciare? Or are you losing your hearing in your old age, Sarutobi? The man said, making Sarutobi's frown deepen. Ciare, or Clan Restoration Act. The act where the last loyal member of a village has to restore the clan to their former status, and we happen to have one loyal member of a precious and powerful clan in our midst, and a female at that. And what's that supposed to mean, you old war hawk? Yelled a woman with upside-down triangular tattoos under her eyes. It means that instead of waiting for sperm cells to develop had she been a boy, she will start ovulating early, meaning she can start restoring the clan, and we can bar her from becoming a ninja to start reproducing, which would have been a gamble if she was male because we don't know if he would come back to the village alive with his piece, said Danzo, sat back in his chair. Basically you want to make her into a baby factory, said Sam with a growl, her sharp nails digging into the table. If you want to put it that way then yes, said Danzo with a disregarding look in his eye. Now I have some strong men available that I think are good material for Bree. Stop talking about her like she's some sort of farm animal or racing dog. Everyone turned their attention to Naruto, whose clothes had changed to his Freddy style, but the change of clothes isn't what made the others in the room react in surprise and slight fear. No, it was the big animatronic transparent bear with a similar top hat and bow tie as the blonde boy, standing behind him staring at them with a blank look in his eye and a creepy smile on his face. The animatronic towered over Naruto, who was standing there with his charka blaring like a shining beacon. I stop acting like she's not even in the same room as you. His voice was normal, then sounded like a cross between Freddy's and his every now and again in the sentence. I won't let you treat her like that. After he said that, his charka rose sharply with the animatronic's eyes turning black with white lights in the middle. Everybody in the room was seated so far in their seats that they were likely to topple over. Naruto was growling in anger, about to step forward to teach the council member named Danzo a lesson, but stopped when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked back at the NBU. What? He yelled in anger at being stopped. The animatronic faced the man, making him sweat slightly at the murderous intent rolling of it. He fought the fear the shadowy figure sent him, and pointed to the girl besides Naruto. The blonde boy turned his attention towards the girl, and he froze. The girl was frozen in what Naruto thought was terror, since she looked pale as a ghost. Satsuki was having flashbacks to when Itachi slaughtered their whole clan, and the ominous/murderous intent the man carried with him that night. Instead of the bubbly idiot she was used to seeing, she saw the blazing red Sharingan eyes of her brother, as he stood with blood on his clothing. Naruto's chakra died down, and the animatronic vanished, as he let his head drop, a shadow casted over his eyes. I'm sorry, Satsuki-chan, he said, making the girl snap out of her trance. Naruto whispered, looking at the blonde who refused to look up at her. Such power for one so young, said Danzo, once again breaking out the silence. You would do well in Root Boy. Naruto just glared at the old war hawk, who didn't seem fazed. Enough! Hiruzen yelled, slamming his hands on the table, shaking it. I propose a wager, he said, trying to divert everybody's attention away from Naruto. What kind of wager? Asked Danzo, intrigued along with the others, pushing the strange occurrence to the back of their minds, but not forgotten. The kind where if you win we do what you want, but if I win you back off, and Satsuki gets to live a life free from Ciare, and anything pertaining to it, said the third. Then let's hear it, Sarutobi, said Danzo, egging him on. Sarutobi took a deep breath. It's simple. If Satsuki-chan can achieve the rank of Rookie of the Year with perfect scores in every category, then she is free of the Ciare, and those pertaining to it, and no one can force her into it. And if she doesn't? Asked Danzo. Then she will have to give up being a ninja, and undergo the Ciare, and you may pick the males for breeding. Hiruzen felt dirty just saying that sentence. I will agree if I get to hand-pick 3 children of the batch of new Uchihas she produces. Agreed. But nothing more, said Sarutobi with finality. Then I agreed, said Danzo with a nod. Gigi, you can't. Naruto was stopped from saying anything by the Anbu placing his hand on the boy's shoulder, and giving it a gentle squeeze to reassure him that the Hokage knew what he was doing. Then let's set the rules, shall we? She cannot get any help from any ninja besides her teacher, and that is only what she learns in class. No student in her class is allowed to give her any tips that will lead her to any answers, be it answers on paper or any academy. Also, she is to move out of the Uchiha compound because that place contains too much knowledge for her that could help her in being Rookie of the Year, said Danzo. Agreed. But no one is allowed to sabotage her results, None of your root members may watch over her while she trains, and they may not talk to or encounter her. That goes for you too, Danzo. The man frowned, but nodded. Also, I will personally oversee her performance to become a ninja in her last year, and no one may speak of this wager to anybody under threat of death. With that said, the third called the meeting to an end, and told everybody to leave except the dog-masked ANBU. He told Naruto and Satsuki to go back to class, and not breathe a word to anybody about what went down here. The third sighed well, sinking into his seat. Permission to speak freely, sir, said the masked man. Granted. Why would you make such a bet on Hokage-sama? The man asked, confused. How are you certain that a girl will be able to achieve perfect marks, when even Itachi himself could not? That right there is why, said Hiruzen. Huh, what is that girl's goal in life at the moment? Asked the Kage. To kill her brother, the ANBU replied without a second thought. Right. If she realizes that even her brother couldn't achieve perfect marks for everything, it will make her more determined to win the wager, said Hiruzen. I see, said the ANBU. But isn't that a double-edged sword you're playing with, sir? If she does achieve perfect marks in everything, she might think she's already ready to fight Itachi. And we both know that he is way stronger than even me, and I'm the ANBU captain. Ah, you see, that's where you come to Kakashi. The silver-haired man tilted his head in confusion. Me? Yes, I won't tell you how you fit in, but I will tell you this. From this day forward you are retired from the ANBU forces, and will be demoted to the rank of the man who took a step back in shock. But sir, the third held up a hand to stop him. Let me finish. The man stopped talking. You will be demoted. End of discussion. Not only that, you will start hanging around Naruto now onwards until he graduates. Sir, I don't see how this helps, Satsuki said. Kakashi, don't get me wrong, I'm glad to be able to hang around my sensei's son, but I don't see how that will keep Satsuki from running off and getting herself killed. That will be made clear at a later date. Hiruzen waves off Kakashi's concerns for now. I want you to hang around Naruto to gain his trust, and for Kami's sake get the boy to eat something else besides ramen. Kakashi chuckled at that. I understand, sir, he said, about to leave, but was stopped by the Hokage. Oh, one more thing. The man turned around to look at the old man. I want you to influence Naruto. How do you mean, sir? Kakashi asked. Show him your normal side. He is at that age where he's easily impressionable. Make him think being like you is cool. The Hokage used air quotation marks when he said cool. Kakashi's sweat dropped at that. I'll see what I can do, he said, then caught a book thrown to him by the Hokage. If he wants to read a book in public like you, give him that boy instead of your ich books. The silver-haired man looked at the boy, and read the title, Sealing Arts for Beginners. Alright, Hokage-sama. With that, Kakashi vanished in a swirl of leaves. When he was alone, the old Kage sighed. Why do I feel I may live to regret this decision, he said before getting up and leaving the room after switching the light off. After the council meeting, the two kids started the journey to return to their classroom with Naruto still looking sad. He had his hands stuffed in his pocket, and his head down, gazing sadly at the floor. Satsuki, on the other hand, wore a look of concern on her face. For as long as she knew Naruto, he never looked so sad. Naruto, and the word sad never belonged in the same sentence, unless you put the words never as between them. But to see the normally hyperactive boy, who never shuts up, being so quiet, she felt her chest tightened, but she couldn't place it. The last time she felt like this, she witnessed her parents' murder, but she never felt this way about the blonde before. She never felt like this even when she saw the boy get beat up by bullies on the playground, and still get blamed for it by the teachers. He just grinned and moved on. She was about to reach out and grab his sleeve to get his attention, but then the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. The two were swarmed by cheering kids as they left to go meet their parents. Outside the school, we find our favorite blonde sitting on the swing outside the school grounds, watching children being picked up by their parents. He still wore a downtrodden look while gripping the rope that tied the string to a practically thick and sturdy branch. Freddy currently stood upside down on the branch, gazing at the adults who glared at the blonde boy, whispering and pointing at him. Did you hear what happened in the council meeting? Said one woman, whispering to another, not really trying to keep it between her and her gossiping partner. Yeah, they say he finally showed his true colors. The other woman sneered while glaring at the blonde from the corner of her eye. They say that a shadowy bear creature was behind him when his chakra flared. He must be trying to take on a different form instead of his normal one to deceive us, said the first woman. Idiots, thought Freddy with a deep frown of his face. The brown-haired ghost was tempted to possess the women just to see if Puppet was correct about them being able to kill others by possession, but stopped thinking that when Naruto got off the swing and walked behind the tree. When the boy walked out the other end, he was wearing his puppet-style clothes with the mask over his face. The change of clothes and the empty look on the mask's face made everybody stop and stare at the boy who just walked past all of them with his hands balled into fists in his pockets. At the school doors, Satsuki stood watching the blonde boy, trying to figure out what to say to him. It was obvious that the incident at the meeting was getting to him and eating him up inside, but she couldn't figure out why it was. She was the one whose body was being put on the line here, not his, damn it. But the way he stood up for me though, she thought, leaning against the door frame, and sliding down into a sitting position with her hand over her heart, which was beating fast. She knew it was the pressure she was feeling at the moment, because of the wager that was placed between the third and Danzo with her body on the line. But a part of her felt her heart flutter when she thought about how the dobe of the class stood up for her, and how powerful he looked doing it. "What's wrong with me?" she said with a sigh, hugging her knees to her chest. A little distance away a certain blonde girl was watching the two, and saw the looks the last female Uchiha was sending the blonde boy. Interesting, she thought, then walked out of the school grounds with her small hand in her father's bigger one. Naruto made it to an alleyway where he spent his nights huddled in a box. He sat down in the box, and pulled his knees up to his chest, and rested his head on his knees. "Come on, Naruto, are you still feeling down about what those women said?" asked Freddy, sitting in the box next to the boy who didn't say anything. "No," he said after they sat in silence for what felt like minutes. "What is it then?" asked the former animatronic, as he watched the people passing by the alleyway. Naruto kept his head on his knees. "I didn't want her to see me like that," the boy said, looking up, lifting his mask up. "You were angry at what that Danzo guy said, and you showed it to Freddy," patting the boy on the head. "If you asked me, she probably feels happy that you even spoke out against what that man had to say." Freddy grinned at the blonde. But she looked at me with fear," said Naruto, looking up at the man. "I don't want her to look at me like that." Freddy took his hand off of Naruto's head, and smiled softly at Naruto. "She's been through a lot from what I hear around the village. She witnessed the death of her whole clan, which is traumatizing. I should know, I've seen kids who have seen death, it scars them for life," said Freddy with a faraway look in his eyes, but shook his head to clear those thoughts out of his head. So seeing such a murderous aura in front of her once again must have brought back memories of watching her brother murder her parents in cold blood right in her own home. Naruto lowered his head. "I guess you're right," he said, then paused. "Wait, how did you know her parents were murdered in her home?" "I don't remember anybody saying anything like that in the meeting." Freddy started sweating. "Ah, really?" "Oh, I must have heard it on the street," he said, scratching his cheek with his index finger. "The reports of the murder weren't released to the public." "Freddy, what aren't you telling me?" Naruto said, narrowing his eyes. The former entertainer slumped in defeat. "Alright, I may have, kinda, maybe just," he mumbled the rest. "What?" "Said I may have possessed her during the meeting," Freddy said, refusing to look Naruto in the eye. "You what?" Naruto yelled, getting up from inside the box, glaring at Freddy, who looked down in shame. "You could have killed her." "I know it was wrong, but every time they mentioned the name Itachi her face darkened, and I was curious." "Okay? When you weren't looking I may have possessed her slightly, just enough to dig through her memories," said Freddy, getting out of the box, and standing up straight. "What the hell, Freddy?" Naruto tried to take a swing at the man, but he floated into the air to avoid the blonde. "Get back down here, you bastard!" the boy yelled, shaking in rage. "Not until you calm down," said Freddy, floating as high as the roofs. "Bastard!" Kakashi walked down the street riding his Ichich novel, and still somehow dodged people who were in his way. The man was deep in thought as he read, and it wasn't about the story in the book. No, it was because of a certain blonde boy who was hard to find. After having a nice friendly chat with the owner of the orphanage, he found out that Naruto was kicked out a month ago by the old hag running the orphanage. It was safe to say that the woman got an earful, and got fired by the Hokage, who was currently trying to find a replacement that wasn't biased. Now where would Naruto be? He thought, thinking of all the places where the blonde could be. "Bastard!" he heard coming from an alleyway across the street. The voice was easy to distinguish. "Call the devil, and he shall come," said Kakashi, placing his book away in his specially designed pouch to keep his precious book safe. After all, first impressions gotta be good. The silver-haired crossed the street and entered the alleyway to see the blonde glaring at the sky, shaking his fist at it. "Am I interrupting something?" he said, gaining the blonde's attention. "Who are you?" asked Naruto, slightly on guard. Something about the man made him think of the A and B from before. Maybe it was the silver hair. "Oh, where are my manners?" the man I smiled. "My name's Kakashi Hatake. What's yours?" "Naruto Uzumaki," the boy said, narrowing his eyes, taking a step back. "So Naruto, what are you doing in an alleyway? Aren't you supposed to be at the orphanage?" asked Kakashi, tilting his head to the side. Naruto froze up while looking around for a way to escape. Kakashi sensed his distress, and saw the blonde searching for something. "I'm not going back," Naruto yelled, backing up till his back hit the wall behind him. "You can't make me." Kakashi blinked in surprise, then his face dropped in sadness. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I wish I could have been there," he thought, then steeled his emotions. "Wow, calm down, Naruto. I'm not here to make you go anywhere." He gave an eye smile, crouching down to get to eye level with the blonde boy, and putting his hands up, showing him he meant no harm. Naruto stopped panicking to look at the man with a suspicious look in his eyes. Kakashi took this as a sign that the blonde wasn't going to overreact again, so he tried to talk to him to break the ice. Listen, why don't we have a talk, huh? I'll buy you something to eat. The man I smiled well. Naruto looked at him up and down looking for any sign of deceit, but found nothing pertaining to it, so he decided to give the man a chance. I mean, wouldn't you want to get free food? The two walked into a standard ramen and sat down on the stools in front of the counter. Kakashi with a nice smile, and Naruto looking left and right almost looked like they were expecting something to happen. Kakashi, an old man, stepped out from the back holding a ladle in his hand and a smile on his face. Tunchi, it's been too long, said Kakashi, shaking the man's hand. That it has, boy. You haven't been here since Kushina dragged Minato and your team in for asking the question, what is ramen? Said Tanuchi with a hearty chuckle. Kakashi chuckled, as well, with a faraway look in his eyes. Yeah, Bito got a real earful that day, said Kakashi. Tanuchi noticed the boy sitting next to Kakashi, who looked ready to bolt at any moment. Oh, it's him, thought Tanuchi, studying the boy. My, he's like a splitting image of the two of them, and if he's anything like Kushina, then he must have the same appetite. Hello, said Tanuchi, smiling at the blonde boy, who flinched. Hi, he said softly, looking down at the counter, making the man frown sadly. He's like a cornered animal, he thought. He placed the ladle down and placed his hand under his chin in thought. Naruto flinched when the man put his ladle down and looked up, expecting to see the man about to go off on him, telling him to leave, but he didn't expect him to be thinking. This is your first time here, right? He asked, making Naruto nod dumbly. How about a bowl of ramen in the house? Naruto blinked, then tilted his head to the side in confusion. Ramen? What's that? He asked. Kakashi looked over his shoulder at that, a reflex he developed when Kushina barged into his team's meeting once back when he was a genin. Minato had offered to take the genin out for lunch and suggested ramen. That was when Obito made the mistake of asking what ramen was. The minute he said those fateful words, a red streak of what he could only call a demon hell-bent on destruction entered the training ground and immediately targeted Obito. When the streak slowed down, it showed Kushina Uzumaki, who was close to throttling the poor Uchiha. After that, Kakashi watched what he said about ramen in fear of Kushina coming back to tear him a new one. My boy, you haven't lived if you haven't tasted ramen, said Tanuchi with fake shock in his voice. Did you know the fourth Hokage was known to frequent this shop along with the village's second strongest kunoichi? Who was the one to name ramen the, and I quote, foods of the gods? After he said that, Naruto's excitement skyrocketed. Really? He yelled in surprise, making Tunchi smile proudly and nod his head. All true. Then I gotta try some. The boy declared. One of your biggest bowls, old man. Tanuchi just laughed wholeheartedly, walking to the back to prepare the biggest bowl he had for the boy. Freddy was curious as to how one made ramen, since all he knew was how to make cakes and pizzas. So he floated through the wall to watch the man making the food of the gods, as it was called. After waiting a minute, Tanuchi walked back out with a big bowl of ramen in his hands. Naruto's mouth started watering at the smell alone. He couldn't wait to dig in. The boy grabbed a pair of chopsticks and said a quick thanks for the food, then took out some noodles and tasted it. All was quiet in the ramen stand, all three men watching the blonde, waiting for a reaction, the two living men smiling, and the last one waiting to see if the noodles lived up to its title. Naruto's eyes were shadowed by his hair, not saying a word, then his head shot up with stars in his eyes. He started eating the ramen, as if it was given to him by the gods. Kakashi and Tanuchi chuckled softly. Yip, just like his mother, they thought. Freddy was surprised to see the blonde eat like a starved man who never ate anything for a month straight. When the boy was down drinking the broth, he put the bowl down and belched loudly. Oh man, that was good, the boy said happily, then grinned at Tunchi. Can I have another? He asked. Tanuchi laughed. Sure, today you can have as much as you want free of charge, but next time you're gonna have to pay. Naruto had a look of wonder on his face. I can come back? He asked. Tanuchi nodded with a smile. Anytime you want, a kid, he said, walking to the back again. You can even hang out with my daughter, she should be back soon anyway. With that said, he entered the back. Naruto had a grin so big that it looked like it was about to split his face in half. He turned to Kakashi. Thanks for bringing me here, Nisan, he said, making Kakashi freeze. Nisan? He asked, looking at the blonde, who nodded quickly. Yeah, you're my new Nisan because you're so nice to take me out to eat, he said. Kakashi's eyes smiled while ruffling Naruto's hair, slightly knocking his mask down to cover his left eye. Naruto smiled at the affection the man showed him, and looked up at him, seeing that his left eye was covered like Kakashi. Hey, I'm like you, Nisan, he said excitedly. Kakashi's eyes smiled at that. Speaking of being like me, do you want to learn how to be cool? He asked, making Naruto look up at him with excitement just oozing off him. Can you teach me? Kakashi nodded. Sure can, I was popular when I was in school, he said, making Naruto jump up and down in his seat. Teach me, he begged Kakashi to smile under his mask. Alright, how about this? Every day I'll drop you off at school, and pick you up, then we can hang out. How does that sound? He asked with a nice smile. Naruto looked about ready to explode by now. That would be awesome, the blonde said, almost drooling. However, he said, making Naruto snap his jaw shut. I am also a jounin, so if I'm out on a mission I will have one of my friends pick you up. Don't worry about their good people, he added at the end of his sentence, seeing the distressed look on Naruto's face. If you trust them I will also, Nisan said to Naruto with a grin, making Kakashi smile. Cool, the one-eyed man said. Tanuchi had served Naruto 3 bowls by now, and the blonde boy was thankful for them. The 2 bowls afterwards took a bit longer, but the wait was worth it because Tanuchi just whipped up a quick one for Naruto to taste for the first time, just in case he didn't like it. Naruto and Kakashi were chatting with one another, and talking about their lives. Naruto was amazed that his Nisan was the student of the late 4th Hokage, his hero. Naruto made Kakashi tell him everything about the man, from how he looked to what he did on the weekend. The one-eyed was happy to tell the boy all about his father, not that he knew it was his father though. They were chatting about one of the missions his team went on when someone entered the ramen stand. Dad, I'm back. The two turned around to see a brown-haired girl who looked to be about 12 standing there looking right back at them with surprise. Oh, I didn't know we had customers, she said, smiling at them. She took a closer look at the older male of the 2 occupied stools. Do I know you? She asked, as Kakashi's eyes smiled. Hello, it's me, Kakashi. Remember, he said, as the girl took a moment to take her memories, then finally found it. Oh, Kakashi-san. Now I remember, you used to come into the stand with the 4th, and that red-haired lady said. Well, Kakashi nodded his head. Yep, it's good to see you. You have grown, he said. You're becoming a fine young lady. I am blushed at that, while drawing circles on the floor with her foot. Thanks, he giggled. Who's this Nisan? Asked Naruto, making look at the blonde boy who was eyeing her in confusion. This is Ichiraka Tanuchi's daughter, Kakashi said, ruffling Naruto's hair, making sure not to knock his mask again. Hello, said stepped closer to the blonde, holding her hand out. As Kakashi said, I'm 12 years old. What's your name? She asked. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, I'm 7, and I'm gonna become the next Hokage. Believe it, he said, shaking Iam's hand. Next Hokage? The girl said, then smirked playfully. But you're too short to be the Hokage. Naruto fell off his stool at what? No way, Iam giggled. It's true, asked Kakashi-san. The blonde boy looked at the masked man, who decided to join in on the joke. I'm afraid she's right. Naruto, you must be. Kakashi held his hand at Iam's height. This tall to be the Hokage, he said in fake sadness. At this point, Freddy was relaxing on the ceiling, chuckling. Even he knew it was a lie, and he didn't know what the Hokage was until recently. That's so unfair. Naruto wept, feeling dejected. Iam felt bad for the blind, so she stepped forward and gave him a hug, making Naruto freeze in surprise. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, you're still young, you'll grow as you get older, she said. Naruto looked lost. This was the first time someone has hugged him like this. He didn't know what to do. Hug her back, said Freddy, as Naruto decided to just listen to the former animatronic, and copied Iam by wrapping his arms around the girl. After that, Naruto and Kakashi left the ramen stand, waving goodbye to the father-daughter duo. Naruto promised that he would come to the stand every day to hang out and have some ramen. The two were walking down the street towards the apartment district of the village, making Naruto look confused. Nisan, where are we going? He asked Kakashi, well, just smiling at him. It's a surprise. His cryptic answer made the blonde pout, but didn't question further. They walked for a bit, then arrived at an apartment building which looked about middle class. They walked up the flight of stairs, then arrived at an apartment at the top. Wow, do you live here, Nisan? Asked Naruto, looking at the apartment in wonder. Nope, said Kakashi, was searching for something in his pocket. A friend. Nope. Who then? Asked Naruto. Yours, he said, handing the keys to Naruto, who looked surprised. What? The blonde boy looked up in shock. Go ahead, open your new home, said Kakashi, giving Naruto a little push towards the door. Naruto's hand shook as he brought the key to the hole. When he put it in and turned, the lock opened, allowing the boy to enter the apartment and look around in wonder. The place was already furnished with couches, a bookcase. Through a door was a kitchen with a fridge, a stove, a microwave, a sink, and a table with 4 chairs around it. The boy walked further in and entered a door leading him to a bedroom with a bed that was made and ready for him to go sleep in, a closet, a dresser, and a bedside table. To the left of the room was a door that led to a bathroom which had a shower which doubled as a bathtub, a sink, and a working toilet, and a mirror over the sink. Naruto exited the bathroom with a dazed look on his face to see Kakashi standing there with an smile. So how do you like it? He asked. That woke Naruto up, who then proceeded to tackle the man in a hug while weeping into his chest. Thank you so much, he cried, as Kakashi rubbed the top of his head. "I'm glad you like it," he said, as Naruto cried into his chest, tears of happiness mind you. Across the village Satsuki entered the Hokage's office where the third sat once again smoking his pipe. But this time he was facing the door that the girl had entered. "You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama?" she asked, standing in front of the desk. "Yes, my dear, I did," said the third, blowing smoke into the air. "I wanted to talk to you about this wager between Danzo and myself." The girl stiffened that she wanted to know what the old Kage was thinking by making such a wager. Not only that, but he didn't ask her if she was okay with it, and it pissed her off. "I know you're not pleased with it." "No shit," the girl thought angrily, a pissed look present on her face. "But you have to know that I had no choice," the old man said, sighing sadly. "Even though I am the Hokage, I don't have authority over everything, especially over civilian matters." "How does the restoration of a clan fall under civilian matters?" hissed Satsuki, well, narrowing her eyes. Hiruzen sighed, being reminded of a similar situation when Kushina was placed in their village. The advisors were quick to jump at the chance to have a new Uzumaki clan that would be under their lock and key. But through a combined effort of Jiraiya, Minato, and himself, they were able to shoot that idea down. Now he found himself in the same situation, except he lacked the necessary support from such high figureheads. Jiraiya was a Sannin, so he was able to involve himself in civilian matters. Minato was a young protege who everybody knew would make huge waves in the elemental nations, so when he threatened to leave and join Kumo, they were put on the edge of a cliff, and he was in all his rights to leave since he wasn't a ninja yet. And the blonde boy was the only thing who was keeping Kushina in the village, and loyal to it. Now it was only Hiruzen standing against his advisors, while there was Naruto if his performance at the meeting was anything to go by. He reminded me of Minato standing up for Kushina all those years ago, the old man thought with a small smile. "You, Satsuki-chan, are technically still a civilian, so the advisor's word can overrule mine because they are retired shinobi, and fall under the civilian title," said Hiruzen with a frown on his face, putting his pipe out. "But I'm in the academy," argued Satsuki. "You may be training to become a ninja, but you still fall under the civilian status, so if they tell you to jump, you'd have to jump," said the Kage. "I know it's wrong, but it was a rule the first Hokage created when he took on the role as Hokage." Satsuki huffed, and her anger rose, but bit her tongue to prevent herself from shouting choice words at the Hokage. "But why a wager, and why such an outrageous one like that?" asked Satsuki through gritted teeth. "I made a wager because it will keep them in place. Danzo may be a power-hungry warmonger, but he has enough honor to not go back on his word. So the end result will be determined by how you do by the end of the year," said Hiruzen. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table in front of him. "Do you want to know something, Satsuki-chan?" he asked, as the girl remained silent. "If you succeed, not only will you be free from the CRA, but you will have done something previous genin have never achieved ever." This piqued the girl's interest. "Really?" she asked with a raised brow. "Oh yes, very much," said Hiruzen, smirking in his head that he had the girl's undivided attention. "Now if you do this, you will achieve something even Itachi couldn't do." Satsuki's arms dropped to her sides. "Really?" she asked, as the old Kage nodded his head. "Most definitely. Itachi either got 90s or 80s, he may have been the youngest. But the point still stands that he never achieved that which you could. If you can do this, then it will show that you can be better than him," the third said. As Satsuki's hair shadowed her eyes, the girl said, looking up with the fires of determination burning in her charcoal eyes. "If it means I'd be better than Itachi at something, I'll give it my all. This will prove that I will be able to take him on one day." With that said, the girl turned towards the door. "Oh, one more thing," she stopped with her hand on the doorknob. "Just because you got perfect marks in the academy will not prove that you're stronger than him at the moment, but it will show you have the potential to be better than him in the future." With that said, the third turned around in his seat to look at the village. Satsuki exited the office with her bangs shadowing her eyes again. She thought about what the third said to her. 5 years later, Naruto walked down the street towards his second last day of the academy. Now if he was the same as he was 5 years before, he would be jumping around and hollering like a madman about finally becoming a ninja. But time with Kakashi has calmed him down considerably. How? Well, for instance, he wasn't running down the street shouting about being like he should because he was 3 hours late. This is a habit he picked up from the one-eyed. No, he was taking a leisurely stroll down the pathway towards the school. Something else he picked up was Kakashi's ability to read and do things at the same time, which is what he was doing at the moment, although his choice in literature was different compared to the one-eyed. Yes, the blonde had taken a liking to books on seals, a ninja art that wasn't used since the destruction of the Uzumaki clan. When he learned of this fact, he threw himself into learning the ninja style of his dead clan. But getting back on track, Naruto picked the habit of giving lame excuses for his tardiness, angering those who asked him not that he cared. Ah yes! Another thing he picked up, his carefree laid-back attitude. The blonde was known to do things half-assed during the academy, not giving a damn, and every time the blonde got yelled at about his attitude he just shrugged and read his book. Hell, Naruto took it a step further, and sometimes didn't show up to school at all. This instantly labeled him the dead last, not that it fazed him, so everybody kind of expects him to fail, which worked fine for him. More time to read. Currently the boy had a leather-bound book in his left hand with a pencil in his right that he was spinning. His nose was buried in the book while working on a standard seal for a paper bomb, trying to edit it. If I change this now, that will make it diffuse. What about that? Maybe. But it would blow up the minute I had chakra. And that would be messy, he thought, entering the school grounds and heading for the entrance to the academy. He made his way through the halls, and towards his class. He didn't bother knocking, he just opened the door, making Irika stop his speech mid-sentence. The whole class looked back and saw the boy, and many girls blushed at the boy. Yes, people, the blonde had acquired himself a group of fangirls. How, you might ask? Well, when it was made clear that Satsuki was a female, and Sasuke was fake, the girls felt lost in their quest to pursue someone. Normally they went after the guy who was at the top of the list, in the A-list, but many of them didn't like who their choices were, those being the Shino and Kiba, so they felt like they had no purpose in life. Then along came Naruto with his devil-may-care attitude. To them it didn't matter that he was the dead last, he turned into the apple of their eye. True, the boy ate healthy, and despite his laid-back attitude in class he was always training under the watchful eye of his Nisan, so it was safe to say that the boy was becoming a babe magnet, not that he let it bother him. Nice of you to finally join us, Naruto said to Irika with a frown of annoyance on his face. What's your excuse this time? Naruto looked up from his book. You say something, sensei? He asked, making many of the girls squeal at his laid-back attitude. Just sit down please before I do something I'll regret, the teacher said, as Naruto just shrugged and took his usual seat next to Satsuki. She too had changed quite a bit. After finding out about her brother being unable to achieve a perfect score in the academy, threw herself into studying and practicing to be the best overall. This led her to becoming very fit and filling out in all the right places, giving her a more womanly appearance. From her hips to her waist, and even to her bust, she made many of the other girls in class jealous, and she didn't have a problem with showing too much skin. This is proven by the clothes she wore. A dark blue tank top that stopped just before her toned stomach. On the back was the Uchiha symbol. She traded in her skirt for a pair of tight thigh-high shorts. Her long black hair was tied into a ponytail at the moment, but she changes it from tied to loose every now and again. She didn't even acknowledge the blonde's presence, even though he's the only guy who is allowed to be that close to the girl. The girl had gotten herself a fan base of boys who always ask her out, but either getting the cold shoulder or a flat-out no with a scowl didn't stop them from trying though. Many of the guys saw Naruto as an obstacle since the blonde was always around her. They ate together, they sat together, and they walked to school together or walked away from school together. It was very difficult to find one without the other. The weird thing though, the two barely talked. One just had to see a few words, and the other would know straight away and answer anyway. As I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted here. He glared at Naruto, who didn't even pull his attention away from his book. Today we will have mock tests to prepare you all for tomorrow's test, he said, as the class cheered. Naruto was sitting outside under a tree with Satsuki sitting right next to him. It seemed as though the girl was tired, probably up late training/studying. Despite what the others thought, the two weren't really that close, they just had a mutual understanding. Although if Naruto was honest with himself, he felt attracted to the Uchiha heiress. He didn't want to ruin the friendship they had. Naruto didn't really pay attention to the fights, he just kept going over his latest project. Although that didn't mean he didn't know what was happening, because even though he wasn't paying attention, Freddy was. The brown-haired ghost was currently floating up against the tree well upside down. So what do you think of Freddy? The bland asked his ghost friend softly. Seems like some will put up a decent fight. Like that boy with the dog. The one who uses bugs, even the pink-haired one can up a fight. But against you she'd probably lose straight away. Naruto nodded, listening while still writing in his notebook. Although the one who keeps surprising me the most is the blonde girl. I think it was. How so? Asked Naruto, looking up from his book to see the Yamanaka seemingly dancing around her opponent, tiring him out, hitting pressure points every time she got close. Ino had made a huge leap in her dedication to becoming a kunoichi after Satsuki revealed that she was a girl. The Yamanaka heiress didn't let it get to her. Instead of becoming depressed, the girl took a good look at herself and told her father that she wanted to start training. The man was all too pleased to train her. The result of the training was a well-trained and ninja world-ready kunoichi. The fruits of her labor left her with a well-toned body that, just like Satsuki, she filled out in the right places, like her ass and hips. Even her bust seemed to be filling out. Yamanaka was second on the list of the hottest girls of their year, and it wasn't surprising that she had her own fan base of boys. But the girl would always turn them down by saying she was waiting for the one she truly had feelings for. Who? Nobody knew, and she wouldn't say who it was. Naruto watched the girl fight, and was honestly impressed that the girl could give him a run for his money had they fought, but Naruto was confident he could win against her. The blonde felt something land on his shoulder, making him tear his eyes away from the fight to see Satsuki using him as a pillow, which he just blinked at. Wasn't the first time she'd done it. The girl would come to school tired, and sometimes she would fall asleep in class using Naruto as a pillow. At first he was shocked, but after that every time it happened the boy would let her rest, since last time he tried to wake her up she reacted violently by scratching him and punching him, so, lesson learned. Although this time the girl turned her body towards his, and clung to his torso by wrapping her arms around him. Luckily they were at the back of the students so they wouldn't see the blonde blushing like a tomato. Naruto, the girl mumbled softly, snuggling in the blonde. Next up, Naruto Uzumaki vs Shikamaru Nara, said Irika, as the blonde quickly disentangled himself from the Uchiha who growled sleepily at being woken up. The blonde quickly entered the ring with his puppet mask over his face to hide his blush. Shikamaru stood across from him with a tired look on his face. This is so troublesome, Shikamaru said about forfeit. If you don't participate, I will bar you from taking the exams tomorrow, threatening Irika. Troublesome, mumbled Shikamaru. Begin, said Irika, as Naruto's shadow instantly zoomed towards Naruto, and connected with his shadow. Where do I win? Asked Shikamaru, as Naruto chuckled, his clothes changing into his Freddy style. Think again, he said, and just vanished. Well, it was more like Naruto sunk into the shadows. Everybody was flabbergasted at seeing this. Shikamaru felt the cold steel of a kunai in his throat. Give up, said Naruto with a smirk on his face. The blonde seemed to be coming out of Shikamaru's chest, or more like he was coming out of the shadow his body was casting over his chest area. The class was shocked save for Satsuki, who didn't even seem fazed to see Naruto seemingly pop out of Shikamaru's chest. Irika shook off his shock when he finally noticed the kunai Naruto. The use of real weapons is prohibited. I'm going to have to fail you. A lot of his fangirls started complaining about that, but Naruto just cleared his throat, making them stop now. Now let's not be too harsh on Irika-sensei, girls, he said, lifting his mask off and stepping out of a shell-shocked Shikamaru's shadow with a double-eye smile. Many of the girls had hearts in their eyes when he did it. Satsuki frowned deeply seeing the girls slobbering over the boy. She crossed her arms and turned her head to the side with a small pout on her face. Mine, a chibi version of herself, in her mind, yelled well, holding up a chibi Naruto in one hand and a stick in the other, beating the fangirls off. Yes, Satsuki had figured out that she held feelings for the lazy blonde, but would die before she told him. Or after, she didn't know. Either way, she wasn't gonna be telling him anytime soon, maybe on her deathbed. Naruto walked off the field and made his way to Satsuki. When he got there, he sat down next to the girl who refused to look at him. Satsuki-chan, what's wrong? The blonde asked with a smile on his face. The girl looked at him over her shoulder and blushed seeing him smile. She turned her head away again and pouted. Nothing, Naruto baka. She spat, making the blonde sweat drop. Temper, Satsuki-chan, temper, he said, grabbing a book out of his pocket which had the title How Not to Get Oneself Sealed or Blown Up. Temper. Why, you little? She tried to reach for the blind to throttle him, but Irika called her name, saying it was her turn. Do you really think that is the right way to make her like you? Asked Freddy while he floated upside down over Naruto, watching the girl stomp away. I'm not trying to make her like me, said Naruto with a sad look on his face. Not that others could see it with his face buried in his book. She flat out told me that she will only start dating when she kills her brother. Not that she seems interested in anybody though. The boy turned a page. Had he looked away from his book, he'd have seen Freddy do an upside down face fault at that. Oh, come on. He can't be that dense, he thought. True, the boy was dense as a rock when it came to the subject of romance. Satsuki stood in the chalk-drawn ring watching her opponent, who was a very plump boy who was rubbing his stomach. Next fight is between Choji Akimichi and Satsuki Uchiha. Begin. With that, Satsuki ran straight at Choji, who quickly defended himself from the kick the girl sent towards his chest. Instead of backing up, the girl bent back with her one foot on the ground, and her other on Choji's crossed arms. She grabbed Choji's right leg and yanked, sending him to the floor because of his lack of balance. When he started to fall, Satsuki used the strength in her legs to push him down faster, making him hit his head and knocking him out. The girl humphed while her one foot was still on Choji's unmoving body with her arms crossed. And the one who still holds the record for the quickest win is Satsuki, said Irika, as many of the guys cheered and whistled for the girl, who promptly ignored them and walked back to her previous seat and sat next to Naruto, who was grinning at her. That was great, Satsuki-chan, he said, making the girl smirk. As always, she said, throwing her ponytail over her shoulder. Naruto grinned as Satsuki-chan. Wanna get some ramen after this? He asked her. Ramen wasn't the girl's favorite type of food, but it was Naruto's, and he was the closest thing she had to a friend. If he wants to do something then she'd follow him. Sure, why not, the girl said with a shrug, leaning against the tree to watch the other fights. After all the fights were over, and everybody had done the written test, they had to perform the standard 3 justice of a henge, substitution, and the clone jutsu. Obviously Satsuki got high marks for doing all 3 flawlessly. Naruto on the other hand flat out refused to do any justice, stating that they were a waste of his time, so that got him 0 marks. After all was said and done, the class was let out early to prepare for the test the next day. Satsuki and Naruto walked out of the school next to one another. Naruto had his hands behind his head instead of reading a book. They walked in silence through the market district. Villagers would regard the boy with glasses and look of disdain, but the two didn't really let it get to them. After walking for a while they entered the ramen stand and sat down on 2 of the stools. Ayam stepped out from the back while wiping her hands with a cloth. When she spotted the two she gave them a sly grin. Well, if it isn't our favorite couple, the girl said, making the 2 preteens blush. On another date, I see, she teased further. We aren't a couple, they yelled. And this isn't a date, they yelled in unison again. They looked at each other and blushed, then looked away from each other. Ayam giggled at the interaction before pulling out a notepad. The usual? She asked, getting nods from the 2. The brown-haired girl turned around to face the kitchen for miso ramen, and one with tomatoes, she yelled to her father. Coming up, the man answered. Ayam leaned on the counter so she could make conversation with the 2 soon-to-be genin. So, how's things been? She asked. It's been great, said Naruto, getting over his embarrassment. We got our genin exam tomorrow. Oh? Are you too excited? She asked. Not particularly, mumbled Satsuki with a frown, making Naruto look sad at that. Ayam felt the depressing mood and decided to try to bring the mood up. Do you two think you're gonna be on the same team? She asked, making the 2 look up. Honestly, they never thought about Naruto training with his Nissan and Satsuki training to become the Rookie of the Year. After the 2 finished their meals, they headed in their own directions with a goodbye to each other. Naruto walked down the street with his nose buried in a book while avoiding anything that was in his way. He wasn't really looking forward to the exams tomorrow. No, he wasn't worried about himself. Honestly, he didn't give a damn about how well he did, as long as he passed. No, friends, he was more worried about Satsuki. If she didn't have perfect marks, and she was gonna be forced into the CRA, and he didn't want to see his friend turned into a breeding factory to make the council happy. The boy sighed softly as he got to his apartment and got his key out. He entered it into the keyhole and turned it. When the lock made a noise, there was the sound of things being knocked over and someone cursing, with the sounds of shuffling feet. Interesting, the boy thought, not being the least bit scared. Instead, he put his book away and opened the door, acting like he didn't hear anything. Home sweet home, he said with a sigh while closing his door. His heightened hearing, he picked up a small quiet squeak. He hummed silently, making a shadow clone who walked down the hall towards his bedroom while closing the door and turning the shower head on. A person got up from behind the couch and made a dash for the front door, but came face to face with the smirking Naruto leaning against the wall of the hallway, blocking the person's exit. Looking down at the small person, who squeaked again in shock. Busted was all, the blonde said, making the person back up in shock. But their back hit another person, making them turn around to see another Naruto who wore an identical smirk as its creator. The person only had one thing to say. Ah man, they said in a small girl's voice. Naruto sat across from a small girl who was currently sitting on his couch. He sat on one of his wooden chairs, leaning forward, and looking at the girl with a bored look in his eyes, and his hands connected by his fingertips. The girl in question was squirming in the seat while looking everywhere, but the blonde preteen in front of her. She wore ragged clothes, consisting of a light blue top that had 2 pink stripes on it with blue shorts that stopped before her knees, and lacked shoes. Her hair was brown, and waist length, and her eyes were chocolate brown in color. So said Naruto, making the girl flinch in surprise. Is there a reason you are in my house? He asked, well, raising his brow at the girl. The little girl refused to say anything. Silent treatment, huh? Said Naruto with a smirk. Sorry, but my best friend is the king, or should I say queen, at that game. The 2 sat in silence, the only noise coming from the outside of the apartment. Naruto kept up a passive look on his face while the girl started twitching nervously. I'm sorry, the girl finally yelled, covering her head. Naruto's expression didn't change, but on the inside he was shocked at the girl covering her head like she was expecting him to hit her. Why are you covering your head? He asked, tilting his head to the side in confusion. The girl looked up hesitantly, as if she didn't believe he wasn't going to hit her. She let her arms drop to her sides when Naruto didn't move from his spot. She looked at the boy with suspicion clear in her eyes. You aren't gonna hit me? She asked. Naruto blinked with a bored look on his face. Why would I hit you? He asked. Because I broke into your house, she said, thinking that the preteen was stupid or something. So? I've broken into many houses when I was young, said Naruto, bringing his hands up, still connected by the fingertips. The girl flinched when he did that, making him angry at whoever made the girl this terrified by simple movements. If you asked me, I'd say you show great promise in being a ninja. This made the girl do an impression of a fish, making Naruto chuckle at her expression. Ah, really? She asked. It was a dream of hers to be an awesome ninja that could kick ass. Naruto gave her a double-eye smile when the girl asked him this. Sure, though I would like to know, how did you get in here? He asked. The little girl grinned at the boy. I wouldn't be a ninja if I did that, now would I? The girl said, making Naruto throw his head back with a howl of laughter. The girl grinned bigger at that. She succeeded in making someone laugh, since no one ever paid her any attention unless it was to reprimand her for something she did to get by in life. What's your name, kid? He asked after getting over his laughing fit. Hataru said. Well, Hataru. Naruto tested the name out. What is a young girl like you doing breaking into people's houses? Do your parents know you're doing such things? When he asked, the girl's happy grin turned into a depressed look. I don't have any parents, she said, her hair shading her eyes. Naruto's grin dropped as well when she gave him that tidbit of info. I'm sorry to hear that, but aren't you supposed to be in the orphanage then? He saw how the girl flinched at that. I'm not going back there, she said softly, but Naruto still heard her. It wasn't that hard considering that it was the only two of them in the room. I'm treated as if I'm nothing more than dirt there. I want to be someone. I want to make a name for myself, damn it, she yelled, tears dripping to the floor. Naruto didn't change in his previous position, but his frown deepened when he saw the girl crying. Eventually the girl cried herself to sleep, her cheeks red, and sniffed every now and again. Naruto sighed. Well, his head dipped down, he listened to the girl's sniffs and silent sobs. She sounds just like me, he thought, pushing himself up from his chair into a standing position. If she's an orphan, then Naruto shook his head. Nah, I can't do that. I'm not even a legal adult yet. The boy picked up the girl, noticing how light the girl was for someone of her age, which he guessed was 8. He took her over to his bed and tucked her in. The minute he stepped, the girl turned on her side and hugged the pillow to her person. Naruto turned around and switched the light off before stepping out into the hallway. He leaned against the wall, then slid down till he sat on the floor while looking out at the ceiling. If you heard that, Gigi, would you mind coming over? He said, not getting a response. What are you planning? Asked Freddy, looking at the little girl through the doorway. Many things, Freddy, Naruto said with a sigh, and chuckled. Many things. Hataru has always known what it's like to be cast aside by others. When she was in the orphanage, other children were treated better than she was. Why? She didn't know. All she knew was that the other children would go out of their way to make the girl's life unbearable. And the lady who ran the orphanage didn't even give her the time of the day. She went as far as to give the girl hell without being direct. How? Well, let's see. There was the time the woman took her out of her room she got when she arrived there. Then there was the time the woman watched as many of the children bullied her. Oh, and let's not forget the time the woman had mistakenly locked her in her room for 3 days without food. So when she found herself on a comfortable bed, she thought that the Shinigami had finally come to claim her soul, and that she was in heaven. Either that or hell is more comfortable than others make it out to be. The girl cracked her eyes open to see she was in a bed of a well-furnished room which had pictures on the walls. They all had different people in it, but one person was present in all. That was the blonde boy who owned the home she decided to break into. She jumped off the bed and went to the door to peek out. The girl heard voices coming from the kitchen area, and she narrowed her eyes, seeing 2 shadows on the hallway floor coming from inside the kitchen. The little girl tiptoed out of the room while keeping close to the wall to keep out of view from whoever was in the kitchen. When she got to the opening that leads to the kitchen, she could hear the 2 voices clearly, since they were whispering. Probably they thought she was still sleeping. Naruto, what you're asking me is slightly absurd, said someone who sounded old, but there was some authority behind it. Oh, come on, Gigi, it's not that hard, said the other person. Hataru recognized the voice to be Naruto's. What were they talking about? Naruto, I have done this before. It's not that easy, said the old person. You don't know the difficulties that come with this choice. Well, I'm gonna know eventually, right? So why not now? Asked Naruto. There was silence after that. Neither said anything, and Hataru thought for a second that they found out she wasn't sleeping anymore. But that thought was put to rest when the old man sighed. All right, I'll approve it. There was the sounds of papers ruffling, and one of them clicking. A pen, just sign here and go, and that girl's suffering. When she heard that, Hataru turned white as a ghost. And her suffering? What were they talking about? She heard the sounds of chairs scraping on the floor. She squeaked in slight fear. Fear that they were going to kill her if their conversation was anything to go by. She backed up towards the room, but her back hit something standing in the doorway. She turned around to see a brown-haired male standing there looking down at her with a concerned look on face. Her eyes started tearing up when she saw him. Freddy thought she was scared of him, but the relief that appeared on her face proved otherwise. "Freddy," she said in a soft voice, in the relief confusing the former entertainer. "Please, they're going to kill me," she said scared. "Do I know you?" asked Freddy, making the girl's face turn from relief to shock. What? She said softly. "It's me. Hotaru," she cried quietly. "Don't you remember me?" she asked, fresh tears falling from her eyes again. She saw that Freddy still wore a confused look. She then looked closer at the guy, and saw that she actually was mistaken. The ghost in front of her wasn't the one she got to know earlier in her life. "Hotaru?" she heard, and froze behind Naruto, and the third Hokage stood watching the girl talking to the ghost. Well, one of the two could see the ghost, but he was confused as to what the girl was talking about. "Please help me," the girl cried, hugging Freddy, who was taken back. The girl obviously was mistaking him for someone else, but that brought up the question, how could the girl even see him in the first place? "They're going to kill me," she yelled, hugging Freddy tighter. This made the others in the room freeze. "Kill you?" The girl turned her head a bit so she could look at the two from before, who looked genuinely confused. The girl nodded her head fearfully. "Why would you think that?" asked Naruto, stepping closer, but seeing the girl hug Freddy closer made him stop mid-step. "You two were talking about ending my suffering," and the blonde knew what she was talking about now, so he crouched down so he could get a level with the girl. "It's not what you think," Hotaru-chan said, reaching into his pocket, making the girl almost grip the hell out of Freddy, whose sweat dropped. "When did I become a huge teddy bear?" he thought, then thought about that question, and almost fainted. Naruto pulled out papers, and held them up so Hotaru could see we were talking about these. He grabbed the front page, and held it out to the girl, who hesitantly let go of Freddy, and grabbed the paper. One word stood out among the rest, and it made Hotaru freeze in shock. "Adoption." This she looked up at Naruto, who gave the girl a double-eye smile, and held his arms out. "Come give your new daddy a hug," he said with a chuckle. The girl didn't move for some time. Well, everybody waited for her to react to the news. When the girl kept staring at the paper in her hands, Naruto dropped his arms with a sad look, replacing his previous happy one. "If you don't want to be adopted by me, then we can." The boy was cut off by the girl tackling him onto the ground while crying into his chest. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The girl kept repeating, sobbing happily into his chest. "I promise I will be the best daughter ever," she exclaimed, making Naruto chuckle well, rubbing the top of her head. "I'm sure you will," he said, smiling at the girl's happiness. They stayed like that for a while before the girl's sobbing subsided. The third cleared his throat, getting their attention. "I'm sorry to break up this happy moment," he said, placing his hands behind his back. "But Naruto, you have some explaining to do. I know what you're going to ask me, Gigi, but at the moment I can't tell you," said Naruto, placing his arms around Hotaru, hugging the girl to his chest. "If my hunch is right, Hotaru here is just like me." The third and Naruto kept staring at each other for a full 2 minutes, a battle of wills going between them through their eyes. Afterwards the third sighed tiredly, gripping the tip of his Hokage hat with his forefinger and thumb. "Alright Naruto, I'll give you that. But when you do decide to tell me, please don't spare any details," he said with a warm smile, which Naruto returned. "I'll be sure to do that," the old man said. The boy made the old Kage nod his head, and turn around. "Alright then," he said, "I'll be heading home for the night." And Naruto remembered that the adoption goes into effect the minute you put your headband on with the old man, then leave the apartment via Shushin. Naruto and Hotaru sat on the floor with the girl still hugging the boy, who was quite well, looking towards the door of his bedroom. Hotaru felt her eyelids growing heavy each passing second, as she listened to her new father's heartbeat. Hotaru heard, and tiredly lifted her head to look at Naruto. "Yeah?" she said with a yawn. "Can you see Freddy? And how did you know his name?" he asked, not looking down at her. The girl placed her head back on the boy's chest, getting comfortable. "Yeah, I have another friend named Freddy. He looks like him." With that, Hotaru was out like a light, softly snoring. The apartment was engulfed in silence again, the only sounds coming from Hotaru's soft snoring. "Do you know what she's talking about?" He looked up at Freddy, who was floating above them with his back to the ceiling. "It's a hunch, but until I see him I'm not sure," said the former animatronic, scratching his chin in thought. "And who is he?" asked Naruto. "He's my successor in the entertainment industry." Freddy floated further up till his back touched the ceiling. "We gave him the name Toy Freddy on account of his suit's toy-like appearance. He was the lead entertainer at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. They remade every one of my friends, but they left us to rot in the back room." Freddy clenched his hands into fists behind his head, and a pissed-off look appeared on his face. Naruto paid attention to the explanation the ghost gave. He adjusted Hotaru's so she could be more comfortable. They closed down that restaurant after accidents. Then they remade the old restaurant, although it didn't get as many customers as it did before, and we were eventually shut down for health code violations. What happened to the toy animatronics is a mystery. Their suits just vanished. I'm flattered, Freddy. They heard a ghost head poke through the ceiling next to Freddy's, making the ghost stop levitating and fall to the ground in a heap. Ow, he groaned, looking up to see someone similar to him descending from the roof and touched down next to the former animatronic. He was a brown-haired man wearing the same kind of suit Naruto's Freddy wore, except it was cleaner and had a tail on the bottom. This Freddy was lighter in complexion than the other Freddy, with red swirls on his cheeks. Toy Freddy at your service, said the ghost with a bow. Naruto had a stoic look on his face. The boy got up and turned towards his bedroom, placing Hikaru in his bed so she could sleep. When she was under the covers and sleeping peacefully, did the boy exit the room after pulling the door on so some light shone into the room. Toy Freddy had a sweat drop at the reaction to his entrance. Freddy tried to keep himself from laughing too loud. Well, now that Hikaru is out of hearing range, let's get down to business, said Naruto, walking past the sulking Freddy with tears streaming down his cheeks. Freddy was stifling laughter. After a long conversation with Freddy about how he was alive and how he found Hikaru, Naruto crashed on his couch ready to sleep. He and Freddy found out that Freddy appeared in this world about a year ago and found Hikaru living on the street. He decided that he would protect the girl with his life, which put him in Naruto's good books. He informed them that he knew about possession and how it made certain people kneel over dead. This prompted the two to tell him that if he possessed Hikaru, she would become stronger than she was none. Freddy didn't really believe this, but after seeing Freddy possess Naruto and feeling the spike in power the boy received when the ghost possessed him, after witnessing that, he agreed to give it a try. Naruto flipped on his back with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what just transpired in the last few hours. This would make for a great story one day, he thought with a chuckle, and turned on his head to look out the window, watching the night sky. As the moon bathed him in its natural light, he reached towards the stars, as if he was trying to grasp them. Wonder what Satsuki-chan is doing, he thought with a smile on his face before closing his eyes to go to sleep. Across the village, our Uchiha heiress was practicing her taijutsu and performing accuracy training by trying to hit bullseyes on the targets she had set up around the training ground she was in. Most of the targets had kunai or shuriken embedded in the center of it, while some had them in one of the outer rings. The girl threw one more kunai hard enough that half of it was stuck in the target. She fell on her back while panting after that last move. Once her breathing was under control, she looked towards the sky at the stars shining brightly alongside the moon that lit up the training ground. She stared at the stars, seeing a shooting star fly across the sky. The girl never believed in wishing for something. If you wanted something, you have to go out and make it come true, unless it was something impractical like asking for superpower. Although in the world we live in, we can do things akin to superpowers, she thought with a giggle and a smirk. I wonder what Naruto's doing, she said, reaching towards the stars trying to grab them. Are you looking at the same stars as me, Naruto-kun? With that, she fell asleep on the ground. Interesting, said Kakashi, sitting in one of the trees watching the girl sleep from the corner of his eye while his nose was still buried in his book. In an apartment that was at the top of a flower shop, one Ino Yamanaka sat with a brush in her hand, looking in a mirror that was in front of her. One day, she thought with a serene smile on her face, looking at one of the pictures on her dresser which showed two babies together in one crib. One was sleeping. The other was a girl who was also asleep. But unlike the boy who was on his back, the girl was sleeping on her side and held the boy's head close to her chest. We will be united again, she said, grabbing the picture and holding it close to her chest. I got strong, so I can stand next to you in the future, either as your friend or someone more, she said, sighing sadly. She placed the picture on her dresser again and turned the light off before climbing into bed so she could get up early to go to school and become a ninja to get one step closer to her one true love. Thanks for watching my video. And make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.